Hello and welcome back to Shelf Center. Thank you so much for stopping by. I was invited by Circe's Booked to participate in the 30 Days of Stephen Graham Jones. And so I am day number 10. Hopefully this gets up on the right day. But anyway, this was actually my first Stephen Graham Jones, and a little story for you that apparently the guy that's known for horror and some science fiction, you still can't just randomly pick a title and without knowing anything and expect it to be along those lines. So the book I picked was Growing Up Dead in Texas. For me, thinking that Stephen Graham Jones writes horror, this has got to be a zombie book, right? It turns out this is his nonfiction work. So I was highly surprised by that. About 30 minutes or so into the book when I realized it is more about Stephen Graham Jones, his own kind of autobiography / some journalism that he did, so almost like a Krakauer type book of him growing up, this huge cotton field fire that kind of messed this town up that he grew up in, and this is a tiny farming town in Texas, and just the implications of that, and mostly is a kind of mystery surrounding, all right, who done it? Who started this fire, and who had the motive behind it? So this was actually my first Stephen Graham Jones book that I've ever read, and I've heard a lot of things, and this was why I was excited to get involved in this. So it's funny though, is it's also the first nonfiction review of the channel. Accidentally, my bad. It turns out you can't just not judge a book by its cover, but also by its title. Those are bad things too. So anyway, things that stuck out to me as just a new Stephen Graham Jones reader. His writing style is really he's just an incredible writer. So incredible just at how he kind of puts things out there into the world, and it's really intense, almost like Chuck Palahniuk. I thought, Fight Club, just this kind of, he's got his own style, he's going to do it his way, and he even kind of like mentions it as the kind of narrator of this story. He'll, at one point, he says, okay, that's enough of that, and we'll go into something else, and then he goes back into the first thing that he stalled on or stopped on in that first chapter, or the second, whatever chapter it was in, and it goes back into the story. So just really interesting, the control of that narrative that he has, and just the voice that he has it's almost intense, but it's just really good. It's really drives you through reading this and makes it entertaining. Even though, my typical, I kind of shy away from the nonfiction because of the fact that it can get on the more dry side, and this was definitely far from that. Interesting, just mystery. So the whole thing is just a lot of interesting facts about growing up in this little town, and how almost like people dying, even kids dying, was almost just like, well, that's just a part of farming life. That's what we deal with here. So it's kind of intense that way, and interesting, and I don't doubt it, right? And you just kind of like, not that people are going out of their way to harm people, but it's kind of this kind of carelessness, and part of it too is just the carelessness, I guess, of youth and thinking that you're immortal, but also having access to heavy farm equipment at the same time. It can be a bad result, apparently, and that's what I've learned here through this narrative. Some of the things that threw me off a little bit is some of the mysteries would kind of be like, we'd get into something, and I'm going, okay, are you implying or implicating this person or not? I kind of left a little confused in parts. There's a whole cast of characters and whatnot, and so it's hard to kind of go, okay, wait, who is that person again? So for me, may have heard it a little bit that I did this on audio, and so that's hard to kind of keep some of those names in your mind, but that was kind of one that kind of held me back a little bit. in just fully, being immersed when I had to go, okay, wait, who are these people again, and really go back into and try to look up things and go do research online with who's who. And there's not actually a lot online, despite how pretty popular this book is, and obviously Stephen Graham Jones is. So I talked about the prose being really good, and the writing style itself just being really just very sure of itself, right? And very confident in what it's doing. I liked this wasn't really A to B to C to D narrative. It wasn't linear. It kind of jumped around to a couple places because, as Stephen Graham Jones is talking about, it's like, this is somewhat my memory, but my memory is from a 12-year-old. So he's also interviewing people, talking to people, and so it's also kind of each person's kind of perspective, and some of those people with things to hide and to kind of keep secret, and then you also have this idea of this famous author coming back to his hometown and interviewing these people, and people kind of not reacting to that extremely well all the time, or the opposite. And it's just this interesting, like, what, if someone in your high school or your junior high or whatever became famous and comes back and is trying to talk to you, and what would you do, and what would that feel like? I don't know. It would be an odd thing, right? Little story. I went back to my hometown. I ended up buying a fridge from Jonathan Davis from Korn, from his dad, and I was made aware that this fridge did house Jonathan Davis's beers at one time. So, I had a famous fridge. So beat that. I did mention that there is I did read this on audio, and it was Joey Collins who did the narration. And I thought he did a great job just keeping the kind of like this. It's crazy because it's this really sad and terrible story, but it's also kind of at the same time this kind of upbeat push, really kind of pushing you through this and forcing you through this with the writing. And so it's this weird juxtaposition almost of the two things, but it really did a good job of just really telling the story, and Joey just really nailed it on this, I thought, too. So overall, I have to say I will definitely be reading more Stephen Graham Jones. I am looking forward to that. I really enjoyed the writing style, and I hear and I understand from just kind of some of my research that this is definitely his typical writing style, and that's what I really liked about this probably the most. The story itself was interesting, and the mystery, I think, was well handled, although a bit confusing at times. So it did have some drawbacks, but overall I'd have to say I give it a 7 out of 10. It's a very solid installment in the world of nonfiction, even though my expectations were in a completely different place for this. TLDR, I maybe do a little bit of research before you sign up for a collaboration with other booktubers and whatnot, and content creators. But at the same time, it doesn't always work out badly. And I thought this was really a good introduction, and maybe the perfect starting place, because now I can get into my loves, which are more of the fantasy, sci-fi, and horror variety. So I feel like it can only go up from here, right? Anyway, really excited to be part of this. Thanks again to Ursi and for getting me involved in this and giving me a chance and a reason to read some Stephen Graham Jones. And anyway, thanks for stopping by. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will catch you next time. Bye.